Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Tuesday, the 23rd of February, 2021. And today we are on session F1a. That means this is an extension of yesterday, still defining freedom. And today we're going to be defining freedom as a national and a world theory. Yesterday we talked about it more on a personal level. So your I can statement is still the same. We're going to talk about a brief history of freedom in this country and beyond the borders. And you will be doing an evidence of learning activity today. You still have your Black History Month week long assignment. And I want to make sure that you're watching tomorrow for an assignment for Wednesday. So keep your eyes open for that. And let's go ahead and get started because this is going to take a little bit of time. Um, these are the men who founded our nation as it is today. If you look at the picture, there's something very glaring about it, something that would never happen today. Look around the room. Think about what you see. We're going to talk about 8 points in history that are sort of milestones for us. And I want you to consider all of these as we're going through our unit on freedom and basically on the nonfiction that we're talking about. And the first thing we're going to talk about is our founding fathers and the Declaration of Independence. There's that picture again. Again, I'm not going to say, you pretty much can tell what's going on in that picture. These are the gentlemen who decided that they wanted freedom, but that freedom isn't free. Freedom has rules. And even though everyone has rights, you have to honor other people's rights just as much as they have to honor your rights. So they created laws and they created policies that would organize our country in a way that, in their minds, was equal and fair. That every man is created equal and we all have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But when they said everyone, did they mean everyone? Maybe not. So then let's look at the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights was created to um, sort of amend or alter anything that needed to be adjusted for the time. You know, as times change, expectations change, ideologies change, we evolve. And so the Bill of Rights is meant to keep up with that evolution and to ensure that all rights are still being honored. So, not long after the Declaration of Independence, they started putting these bills together, and they called it the Bill of Rights, that guaranteed fundamental rights for individuals, and they specified them. They were very specific bills and were very clear in what they were saying. However, those first 10 were still restricted to a limited scope of citizens, let's say. So, that being said, slavery was abundant at that time, as it was around the world. It was totally accepted in most countries. Um, but then we move up to the 1800s and the abolition of slavery. To abolish means to eliminate or get rid of, you know that. And so President Abraham Lincoln is the president credited with abolishing slavery. by signing the Emancipation Proclamation. You've heard of that. He said that we didn't have the right to own other people, and he was the first president to really say that. So he was not well liked for that. And as you know, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by an actor named John Wilkes Booth. For that very reason, John Wilkes Booth did not agree with Abraham Lincoln's politics. So he killed him. It was a violent time. It was a time when people were going against each other, um, basically because they disagreed about slavery. It was the main issue that they had. But it was really an economic issue. In the South, they said it was cheaper for them to run their plantations and their businesses with slaves than it was to hire employees. And in the North, they wanted to hire employees because they knew that they could depend on them, and they knew that they had more of a control in a way over that and who they hired, and it was very complicated, but it was really an economic decision. It wasn't about it's not right to own a human. I would like to say it was, but they didn't consider that, and that really, and not to put my 2 cents in, but I think that's really the most important thing. It's not right to own a human, and I will stand by that until the day I die. I hope you will, but that's up to you. So anyway, let's move on. So at one point, the nation of France very much admired the United States, and they gifted us a statue. That statue was the Statue of Liberty. And at the base of the Statue of Liberty, she says something like, "Give me your hungry, you're tired, you're poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free," or something like that. And what it meant, and what the reason that they gave us that statue with that plaque was that we as a nation accepted anyone. Yes, come here, be an American, live free, choose your religion, choose where you want to live, choose what you want to do for a living, be successful. It's all here for you. Please come in. From 1880 to 1920, more than 20 million people immigrated here. That was a lot back then. And they were fleeing things like religious persecution. They were fleeing things like poverty and starvation, um, political dissonance. They came here for a lot of reasons, but we welcomed them all. And that's what the Statue of Liberty was about. So let's fast forward to the 19th Amendment, a very important amendment for women. We just celebrated the 100-year anniversary of the women's right to vote. Now, this country is like, what, 250 years old? More than that? Um, Women have only been able to vote for 100 of those years because in the past, women were considered property. We were chattel. If you were married, your husband owned you. If you weren't married, your father owned you. It was as simple as that. So the suffragist movement was an important step for women in their striving for freedom. So while in the time of slavery, it was the African American fighting for rights, the 19th Amendment was the woman's fight for equal rights. And still, like the emancipated slaves, even though women got the right to vote, they still were not equal. But we were working on it. So then let's move up to something called D Day. This was the end of World War II when the Americans overtook Europe. And in that time, we had a huge number of troops in Europe, and a lot of them invaded the beach at Normandy and caused Germany to surrender. Their leader killed himself because he would not surrender. And we freed all the oppressed people of Western Europe because the Nazis had taken over at that time. And if you were not blonde haired, blue eyed Aryan, you ran the risk of being tortured or killed. Um, so not only did we work for freedom in our country, but we worked for freedom around the world. And still come back to America, and our people are not completely free yet, are they? This is the 1940s. Fast forward to the 1960s. Dr. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, two of the most prominent figures from that time, both of them killed because they believed that everyone was not being treated equally yet. And they went about it in different ways, but their goal was the same. They wanted equality for everyone. And it started to stick. People started to buy into it. People started to believe it and say, you know what, that's right. I do deserve to be equal. Why should I have to sit in the back of the bus? Why do I have to go to a different school? Why can't I live in that neighborhood? I'm an American citizen. I have equal rights. And that's all they were telling people. That really is all they were saying, is that everyone has equal rights in this country. But in the 1960s, it was a volatile time. So the last thing I want to talk to you about is the freedom to marry. This is a really recent development in our country. And the Supreme Court has now determined, as of a few years ago, that um, basically any humans have a right to marry. And we do not have the right to determine who can and cannot marry. That was a major, major change in the thinking of this nation. And it's fed our evolution in a huge way. So we've gone from a country being run by a bunch of old Caucasian men to now a country where we have representation of all areas. We have men, we have women, we have non gender specific, we have people of color, different religions, different beliefs coming together, hopefully to work together to make this world a better place and make our country the country that it was intended to be. That's what freedom is about, ladies and gentlemen. Freedom is not free, it comes with responsibility, great responsibility. Now, today I'm going to ask you to do this assignment. It's called NF Session 1 Evidence of Learning. And this is an article about the congressman who just passed away recently, John Lewis, who was a huge, huge part of the civil rights movement. And this article is called The First Time John Lewis and I Integrated the Buses. We just got on and sat in the front row. The bus driver insisted that we move to the back, but we didn't move. And this is written by Bernard Lafayette Jr. He just wrote it in 2020. But the recollections are from a time way in the past. John Lewis fought for civil rights his entire life. He is actually the gentleman who coined the term good trouble. Nothing like good trouble, ladies and gentlemen. If you're working for a good cause, That's good trouble. Okay. Now, there are 4 questions, which is good. Easy for you. However, that means they hold a high weight. You have specific instructions up here. I want you to follow them closely. Each question should be color coded. So your answer to number 1 should be highlighted in green. And then I want you to go back to the text and find the evidence that supports your answer and highlight that in green. And the same thing for the next 3 questions: pink, blue, yellow. If you do not highlight your evidence, you will not get full credit for your response. And that's all I have for you today, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to remind you your assignments today: evidence of learning, and your Black History Month activity today is the Oprah Winfrey piece about if you were a talk show host. And be on the lookout Wednesday for an assignment. There will be one. So until then, T2 out.